Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us. This is Ask an Advocate. And no, it is not a blast from the past. We are just here in the present. It is February 24th, 2026. My name is Michael Waterloo, Director of Communications with the Pennsylvania Coalition of Domestic Violence. And we, a while ago, had a monthly series or every other month series where we would talk to advocates from across the state, from across the country, talking about different topics surrounding domestic violence. So I wanted to bring that back, and I felt like there was no better time than now in February, which is Teen Dating Violence Awareness Month, and there were no better people than to join me than the two who are joining me right now, and that is Alexandra Brooks from the Domestic Violence Services of Southwestern PA, as well as Amelia Rayburn Pazika from the Domestic Violence Center of Chester County. Thank you both so much for joining me today.
Happy to be here.
Thank you.
Perfect. Yes, we are looking forward to having a wonderful conversation about teen dating violence awareness. And I just want to kind of start off with the basics here. And this can be for both of you, but what are some things that people should be looking at whenever you think about teen dating violence awareness and just kind of the 101, if you will?
I can start that one. Teens don't experience a lot of physical abuse. It's not completely unheard of, but it's not nearly as common as it is with adults. And people who are abusive at a young age are still really learning what power and control looks like from the perspective of being abusive. And so the red flags that we're seeing, sometimes they're very overt and in your face. Sometimes they're very, very subtle. So it might be something like telling somebody that they cannot spend time with their friends, but it also might be guilt tripping somebody for spending time with their friends. And while it feels very different, the outcome is the same. Somebody in that relationship feels like they can't spend time with friends. And the word for that is isolation. So, really just making sure that everybody is educated about teen dating violence and that, like domestic violence, it is rooted in power and control. And that's what we really need to be looking for, behaviors that promote power and control for one person over another, instead of looking for signs of physical abuse, which of course are important, but usually not the signs that we're going to see.
Yeah, I also want to add that a lot of things that we see with our teens is that these behaviors are normalized. So a lot of parents and a lot of teens want to know, what are the red flags, right? What are the warning signs of abuse in a relationship? But then the follow-up that a lot of people ask is like, all right, how do they miss these red flags? Because it's not until they're well into this relationship and things have gotten maybe more abusive that they recognize it for what it is. And so I think one of the biggest things is that a lot of these behaviors and these warning signs of abuse in teen relationships are very normalized for a variety of reasons, right? Teens are still learning. They're like in their first ever romantic relationships. They are learning from their peers who may not be the best guides on this path because they're working with similar experience. They're learning from home, from their family, but they're also taking a lot of stuff in from the media. And we know that the media, TV, films, they really romanticize a lot of unhealthy behaviors. And so I think a lot of those warning signs and a lot of abuse, or at least the way it starts in teen relationships, can be kind of normalized by teens.
That makes total sense. And Amelia, during that answer, you're talking about their friends and their families, and it can be really hard sometimes because those friends and families can see those warning signs and try to help and do the right things, but oftentimes they can get it wrong. So, what does that look like whenever those friends or family get that wrong, and how can they help to get it right?
Yeah, I think that a lot of friends or family, especially when we think about family and parents, they want to jump into problem solving mode or take control. And Alexandra made a great point. Domestic violence, dating violence, these things are based on stripping someone of their power and control. So if I'm going to seek help and that person is also trying to take control, I might push away from that immediately, right? So a lot of folks will first try and take control, but I think that it's hard for people to step out of feelings of judgment, right? And it might be a subconscious thing. A friend asking, why would you stay with somebody who does that? Why would you go back with them? A parent feeling like they have to protect you and immediately like grounding you, taking your phone, cutting you off from your social systems. But these are a lot of things that like naturally feel like the right move, right? I want to understand why as a friend, genuinely. As a parent, I want to protect. And so I go into protector mode. And I think that there a lot of times we have to remember, step outside of the what I call the coulda, woulda, shouldas, which are judgmental when whether we know it or not, right? Selling someone, you could have done this, you should have done that, I would have done this. We think that we're helping inspire them to change, but instead, those people might feel more shame and embarrassment in the decisions that they've made in the relationship and the fact that they've stayed so long. They might then feel shame that they've disappointed you, someone that they care about, right? And so we encourage folks to really just be fully supportive, listen, and validate what they're going through. If you want to problem solve, use questions to start that conversation, right? Like, what do you think you should do? What do you think the next safest or best move to make is here? And how can I help you? What do you want me to do to best support you? Let them have that power and control back in the decision making in that relationship. The other thing too, especially for adults, is try to remember what it's like being a teen. I think a lot of adults think, oh, I remember, but when we say, oh, you're not going to marry this person, this isn't the end of the world. I remember hearing that a lot as a teen. This isn't the end of the world when friendships would fall apart or relationships would fall apart. And for me, it really was, because that was my world as a teen. And so we have to kind of step back and remember the scope of a teen's world and life experience and how real and important these things are to them. But we also have to remember the pressure of being a teen. It's really high pressure, and a lot of the stakes are social for them. So thinking about the social implications of ending relationships can be important to keep in mind.
No, they definitely can. And Alexandra, I want to kind of flip it over to you here. To break the fourth wall a little bit, we have chatted offline a little bit. We were talking around this. Hey, what do we want to chat about? What should this look like? And one thing that you brought up was the Bring Love 365 curriculum. Can you kind of break down what that is and what that looks like?
And so Bring Love 365 was created by Bloom 365 in the state of Arizona, and we are one of the early activators of the curriculum outside of their program. And it really touches on exactly what Amelia is hitting on, but we really focus a lot more on the teens, right? We recognize that only 9% of teens who are experiencing or witnessing abuse in a relationship will seek formal help. 80% of students are much more likely to go to their peers before they go to an adult when they have a problem, especially something like abuse in a relationship. And so we really don't want to necessarily put it all on kids to solve these problems, but we want to give them the tools that they need to be able to have healthy discussions with their friends about this. So it's a 7-dose curriculum that is evidence informed, and it's really about recognizing, responding, and reframing, right? Can we get kids to recognize that red flags are all around them, whether they're seeing them in their own relationships or the relationships of their friends? If we can recognize red flags, we can recognize abuse. We also want them to recognize the root causes, right? Dating violence, the desire to have power and control, it doesn't come from nowhere. There are root causes that contribute to that. And so when we understand the why, we're in a better position to disrupt it from ever happening in the first place. So it is really, really important, right? Teen Dating Violence Awareness Month is about raising awareness, making sure that people know what it is. Unfortunately, we're looking at like roughly 60% of teens will experience abuse in their relationships these days. And so we aren't in a position where we've completely stopped it from happening, but we are in a position where we can stop it for the next generation. And so we need to know what causes somebody to want to be abusive. But also talking a little bit about norms and exceptions and how different social norms can contribute to the desire to have power and control. What's really, really important, though, is also activating the kids, right? And making sure that they have healthy communication skills, healthy conflict resolution skills, healthy ways to deal with self-esteem when it's low, right? Because our self-esteem is always going to vary, and how we deal with that when it's low. And for kids who are really, really connecting with the content, right? Because we talk about the bystander intervention process and how they can do something. The kids who connect with the content then also have the option to start a peer advocacy crew in their school to keep the conversation going. The conversation will always mean more when it's coming peer to peer. And so we really work to educate them, but the next step is really, can we activate them outside of this 7-dose curriculum presentation?
And you can find that at bloom365.org. We have dropped a link into the presentation, so please check that out. Thank you for breaking that down for us there, Alexandra. And Amelia, I'm going to pivot over to you and then go back to Alexandra on this one too, because it's a good question for you both. You're doing a lot of work with schools around the community. Can you kind of talk about the work that DVCCC is doing and what that kind of looks like and the impact that it has?
Yeah, and I think this is like a perfect segue from what Alexandra was sharing about the Bloom 365 program. We offer programming in primarily health classes in the high schools all across Chester County, but we also, in some schools, partner with service clubs and the counseling departments, however we can get in front of those students to share with them exactly what Alexandra was talking about. Information about red flags. What are these behaviors that we can see that alert us to possible future abuse in a relationship? And which of these things are we normalizing in relationships around us? We look at a whole list of different red flags and categories of red flags, from technological and digital red flags to emotional and verbal red flags. And we ask the students, are there things on this handout that you've seen in yourself? Are these things in this handout that you've seen in friendships and families and TV? And we ask them to chat about it amongst themselves, write down on some sticky notes which red flags they think are the most common or most normalized among them. And then we unpack the ones that are coming up the most, the ones that the students think are the most important for us to talk about. And so I think it really is so important, as Alexandra said, is to give them the tools to identify those behaviors, but also to do better in relationships around them. If I'm recognizing that the jokes that I'm telling are actually potentially harmful to friends, and when I'm normalizing telling harmful jokes, that those friends are more likely to accept harmful jokes from a partner, I can start to kind of step back and shift my perspective, like get a new shtick, instead of having to rely on roasting our friends. Let's elevate our humor level a little bit, right? But exactly as Alexandra said, we help them understand what's at the core of a lot of those red flags. A lot of things come down to lack of understanding what trust really is, how trust really works in relationships. They boil down to possible past trauma for some of us. They boil down to insecurities that are very normal. We all feel insecure sometimes. And so when we see a partner feeling that way, we accept the behavior that they're engaging in, whether it's healthy or not, because we know how tough that feels, right? And so we do a lot of those similar things that we'd see in Bloom 365. But also, as Alexandra said, we like to try and engage students outside of those sessions, make sure that they're getting involved, if they are inspired to, in this work itself. And so we actually have a teen dating violence prevention task force that helps us improve our education programming throughout our county. And on that task force, we invite teens to be involved. So we have teens from several different schools represented on that task force. They're engaged in different ways, whether it's improving our programming, helping give us ideas for social media campaigns, or just volunteering in unique ways. Right now, one of them is building a web-based app that we'll be able to use in coordination with our program, so students can ask anonymous questions and submit immediate counseling requests in a really accessible and non-threatening way. We encourage them to call the hotline, but I'm like, let's be real, teens are not interested in calling a hotline. They're interested in, sending a text message or submitting a request through an app. So we want to be able to kind of meet the teens where they're at. And then we also have groups of teens who engage in all sorts of volunteer and service work for our organization following the program, whether it's the SAD club club at a school, to one of my favorites, my alma mater, our local high school in Westchester, Henderson High School, has what they call the Fempowerment Club, and they do a lot of really awesome work with us. And then we also engage them in the spring in a high school student art contest, in which we ask them to really kind of dive a little bit deeper into the work that we do and the reality that the survivors we serve face. And we see some really beautiful artwork from that.
Yeah, you touched on something that, I was going to lead over to Alexandra, just about the importance of meeting the teens where they're at. Like, you talked about pop culture earlier in our session. That's something we found connected with our audience here. I'd write about the show You, or the movie Alice Darling, the Britney Spears conservatorship that happened a few years back. Like, being able to channel pop culture is just something that everybody feels like they can relate to. So whenever you are out there talking to teens and kids, Alexandra, how important is it just to be able to kind of meet them where they're at, and just so that everything is really able to be driven home?
I mean, it's incredibly important. And I think, part of that is also being able to stay up on pop culture, right? I know I've been asked about different things, and I've had to tell people I'm not nearly as educated on that as you would like me to be. I really don't want to respond. So also making sure that we are very, very aware of a situation before we respond to it. But, it's something that really does permeate so much in our society. I think even about like our music, right? And how possessive jealousy shows up in music. Nick Jonas' Jealous is like the number one that always comes to mind for me, because it's just very overt, but it's very catchy and it's bubbly. And so we're much more in tune with the beat than we are the actual words. But if you really break it down, it's like, oh, wow, there is a lot of possessive jealousy here. And it's not about the students, teens, adults, anybody not listening to the music. It's really just about understanding. This is a portrayal that's unhealthy, and it contributes to normalizing behaviors. It doesn't mean that you have to turn the song off when it comes on. It doesn't mean it can't be in your top 10 favorite songs. We really just want to recognize the harmful norms behind it. But yeah, pop culture is something that is always changing, which is one of the things I think is great about some of the programs that we offer, because we do some programs with coaches, which I think we'll talk about a little bit later. And, one of the things the coaches will say is, well, it's the same curriculum. I have the same athletes every year. What do I do? Just say the same thing. And it's like, there will always be something that's happening in the world that you can relate to one of these conversations, so that the topic will stay the same, but the conversation can be different.
Yeah, absolutely. I always look at the songs too. Like, I know a popular thing on TikTok is looking back whenever you're in the car with somebody. It's like, oh yeah, this is a song we used to listen to when we were a kid. Oh my God, what were you listening to? Whether it was Third Eye Blind, Semi Charm Kind of Life, you're thinking about Robin Thicke, Blurred Lines, and you actually listen and see the words they're saying. You're like, oh my goodness, I can't. This is what they're saying. The song is so catchy. That's how they get you. And being able to recognize what's actually being said is so important. And Amelia, we also know that teen dating violence isn't just for high schoolers, but it's also important for teenagers as they're getting ready to go to life after high school. What does that look like with your work with local universities, trade schools, or, if people are just going into their career fields right out of school, what kind of preparation and resources are available to them?
Absolutely. We offer a program, fortunately, at Westchester University, in partnership. And we have partnerships with a few of the different universities in Chester County. We're lucky to have quite a few. I want to shout out Westchester and Lincoln University, who have both been amazing partners. But at Westchester University specifically, we offer a program that we started in partnership with the Westchester University Honors College. It's something that we utilize to reach all of their FYE, first year experience students. So essentially all of the freshmen. And from this partnership and program, we have actually really encouraged all universities implement similar programs for their first year students to give them the tools to identify these things. Interestingly enough, 58% of college students have reported not knowing how to help someone in an abusive relationship. 70% of college students who were in abusive relationships didn't even realize that that's what they were experiencing at that point. I think especially a lot of young people think this is this is teen stuff. I'm young, I'm not an adult, I'm not married. And if I were to call and reach out for help, they'd laugh me off the line. You're just a kid, this isn't domestic violence. So it's really important for us to make sure that they understand this is a form of domestic violence. It is something that local resources can support you with, and to help our students recognize that it's not just Title IX and campus safety that they can go through to get legal support and legal protection in these cases. We noticed that the need was brought to us because a number of students were making Title IX reports locally that they felt weren't going anywhere, right? And we were working with the staff there, like, don't they know they could file a PFA? They could get the local police involved. It doesn't have to be done through the university. And so we work together to create a program that we offer that's very similar, but it expands a little bit more on culture, socialization, diving into these bigger issues that college students are a bit more prepared to unpack and recognize and understand. And so after our first year of programming with the Westchester University Honors College, the leads at the Honors College actually decided to implement a university-sponsored research study. So they got IBR approval, and for 3 full years, we've done a Qualtrics pre and post survey to see if it's having an impact on the students' knowledge. Is it having an impact on their confidence and their understanding specifically of the systems and how to navigate them, how to support one another, how to seek help themselves. And it's actually seen significant growth from before the sessions to after the sessions. And we split it up into 2 or 3 sessions, depending on the availability that year. And we've also seen a lot of students who have been encouraged to get involved beyond that work, as Alexandra touched on a bit. And I think it is so important. Just to open up a little bit about myself, I was in an abusive relationship throughout college. And there were a lot of signs and a lot of folks semi-aware of what was going on. But unfortunately, no one in roles, in positions where they could support me, took the opportunities to do so. And so when issues came up, my RA would check in, but never really brought it up. And it wasn't until after the fact that a lot of these folks were like, I knew something was going on, but they didn't have the skills and the understanding to be able to support that. So one of the things we want to do is grow it beyond giving the students the knowledge and giving the staff as well, the RAs, the resident advisors, the people who are in these positions to recognize these things and help these students, giving them the tools to do so.
Thank you for sharing that and for sharing your story a little bit there too. We truly appreciate that. And you mentioned kind of the 3 year, that's a perfect length for the data gathering. Like everybody says, use 3 years at least. So you mentioned at the beginning, like you have that with Westchester, but you're trying to encourage that throughout. Since you do have that kind of data to be able to share about the impact, are there hopes that you'll be able to kind of expand that more throughout Westchester, but also throughout the state more?
Yes. So we are hoping that the research study that's being authored right now by the Honors College professors will be published, and we'll be able to share that. We've encouraged Lincoln University, who's very interested in starting that with their FYE students as well. But we were actually really honored to be invited to PCCD's conference this fall in September. And we were able to present a little bit about the work that we're doing. And we did a bit of a workshop. We made like a campus map. It was actually inspired by PCADV staff and the trainings that you all have provided that are always themed. So we made it a campus map, mapping out your program, the reach, the impact, and hopefully encouraging organizations like ours and colleges all across the state to implement similar programs to potentially see similar impact.
Oh, I love that. I didn't know we were going to get that little plug there, but I'm not mad at it.
Yeah.
But yeah, we'll look forward to kind of following along to see how this continues to evolve because that's so exciting. And being able to give those tools to have those kind of conversations and recognize that it's so important. And Alexandra, you mentioned a little bit ago about certain different programs, Coaching Boys into Men and Coaching Girls Beyond the Game, that really allow adults to learn more about teen dating violence. What are some ways that, as we continue to encourage engaging in conversations, what are some different ways that adults can have these conversations with youth with these programs and outside of it?
So I want to start with outside of it because, and Amelia touched on a lot of this, adults really get it wrong a lot of the times. And so it is really, really important to give teens a safe space to talk about what they're talking about. When they start to see our eyes get a little big, they think, okay, I've said something wrong. I shouldn't say anything more. And so we really just want to create open spaces for talking about relationships. More importantly, I don't know that we spend a lot of time talking to youth about healthy relationships. Most young masculine people can recall being told, don't you ever lay your hands on a woman. And most feminine young people can recall being told, don't ever let a man lay his hands on you. And that is really the primary message we get as young people about relationships. We don't talk about the fact that abuse is more than just physical. We don't talk about the fact that anybody, regardless of gender or gender identity, can commit abuse. We don't have conversations about power and control. But more importantly, we also don't talk to kids about healthy relationships and what that looks like. So we really just that's such an easy way to start the conversation, right? Your friends are dating. What are some things that you're thinking about when you start dating that you would like to have in a relationship? What's really, really, really important to you? Because that's the starter conversation for setting boundaries, which is very, very difficult to do at any age, but especially as a teenager who really just wants to feel loved and wants to be in a relationship, like not literally like everybody else, but again, they're teenagers. It feels like it's everybody but them. There are two programs. One is in its infancy stages, but really, really cool. And one has been around for a very long time. So Coaching Boys and the Men has been around. I cannot remember when it started, but it has been around for quite some time. And DVCCC and DVSSP are both implementing the program. And what it does is it really relies on the relationships that coaches have with their athletes. If you've ever played a sport, or even myself, I didn't play sports, but I was a cheerleader and I twirled baton in the marching band. And so I had a coach for both. And I learned a lot from both of them, lessons that I still talk about and share with other people today. They did so much more than make sure that I could do my dance right and that I could twirl my baton correctly. There was a lot of other conversations that related to my life. And so because this is somebody that athletes have a relationship with, they're an ideal person to be carrying on the message of what does it look like to be an active upstander instead of sitting back and watching? What does it look like to have a healthy relationship? Let's talk about consent in a relationship and what that looks like. And just activating the kids further outside the classroom. Because at the end of the day, right, we're the domestic violence people who come to visit for a few days, and we share a lot of really great information, but we're not anybody important in these kids' lives. And so Coaching Boys and the Men has been a wonderful program. It can be adjusted for middle school students, and Futures Without Violence has created a college version called Clear. And there's been a lot of effectiveness shown through those programs. So PCADV developed Coaching Girls Beyond the Game, because a lot of us were hearing from our coaches and athletic directors, we'd really like to have something for female sports. We'd like something similar. There were some existing programs, but they had a lot of barriers. And so when PCADV worked with specialists to implement Coaching Girls Beyond the Game, DVCCC and DVSSP were awarded grants to pilot the program. And so we're able to continue doing that today. And it's very similar to Coaching Boys and the Men, very similar layout, and it really, really leverages that relationship that coaches have with their athletes. The more the kids are getting these messages, the more it's going to sink in. So ideally, we're starting at home, right? With whatever adult that is talking about healthy relationships, unhealthy relationships, whatever have you, then we're in the school, right? And I'm sure Amelia's experienced this too. A lot of times our teachers that we pair with get really, really into the topic and really into the curriculum, and they become very educated. And so when the students, we're gone, right? And the students are talking to their health teacher and saying, this is going on in my relationship. Now that teacher is more prepared to have that conversation. This just takes it one step further and permeates it through our sports and our athletes who are in the schools. And it is really just an incredible tie-in that really gives adults an opportunity to contribute to the conversation.
Yeah, those are fantastic programs. The Coaching Boys and Men, we dropped a link into the chat so everybody's able to see it. It was founded in 2001, so it has been successful and around for quite some time. So makes me so happy that both of you have the grants for coaching girls beyond the game as well, which I know we're continuing to work on and getting very, very close for external kind of publication so that everybody can view it. But yeah, it looks fantastic. As somebody who's gone through and edited it all and looked at it all, it looks wonderful. Cannot wait to get that out there. And Amelia, you mentioned that your program's doing something fun for February. You said that you chat with high schoolers sometime and they'll give you some social media ideas and different kind of campaigns. So I know that you're doing a campaign for this month if you want to kind of share that. And then Alex, I want to make sure too, Alexandra, I'm sorry, to make sure you can get anything that you have in there too for what you're all doing for the month.
Absolutely happy to share that. We're really excited. Every year since the pandemic, I don't hate to bring up that, but that was an era where we really had to think differently about the ways that we were reaching teens, because we were in Zoom sessions where everyone's cameras were off. They were probably not really paying attention. And we knew that we had to engage them in some sort of different way. We knew at that time also TikTok was really taking off, and a lot of folks were using it, and a lot of trends were happening. And so we really jumped on that bandwagon and we created a video inspired by the concept of the relationship spectrum, right? Where all relationships end up on a spectrum between abusive and healthy, right? It's not this black and white, this or that type of issue. A lot of relationships fall somewhere in between. And so what we did is we created this, it's a long form video that we chop up on TikTok into short forms, in which our education and other staff have lent their voice acting chops, and they share a phrase that's coming from a partner to the other in a dating relationship. And we ask the teens through this video, all right, where does it land on the spectrum? Is it healthy? Is it unhealthy? Is it abusive? And our first 2 years of that video reached tens of thousands of teens. We've not reached as many in the past 3 years of it, but those first 2 years, it really took off. So we still create that video each year and share it in both long form and short form on our social media channels. And then this year, for fun, I'm a big fan of a meme. And so we pulled out some of the more classic, well-known meme structures, and we've utilized those to engage in some of the most important things that we talk about with teens in terms of setting boundaries, in terms of consent, normalization of red flags. And we've used fun memes like surprised Pikachu, or the guy who's looking back at the other girl as he's walking with his girlfriend. And we've used those to kind of try and illustrate those points in a fun and accessible way for the teens, so that they can kind of, again, it's non-threatening, it's accessible. It's not, this clinical educational content the way that it might seem most of the rest of the year when we're sharing our ed stuff. So we're really excited about that, and everybody should check it out and give us a like and a follow.
And we'll make sure that we plug that before we wrap up here. But yeah, like you said, it's all about meeting the teens where they're at, and that is a great way to do it. Alexandra, anything that DVSSP is doing for the month as far as social campaigns or anything of the like?
Yeah, our two biggest things are our Chalk About Respect, which encourages students to take advantage of the sidewalks to talk about respectful relationships using sidewalk chalk. That depends. February is very weird in Pennsylvania. It could be 60 degrees or 10 degrees with snow or no snow. But they can really talk about respect any time of the year. We really just encourage it during the month of February. And then we are in, my gosh, I don't know how many years of our Teen Dating Violence Awareness Month video contest. It's open to all students in Washington, Greene, and Fayette counties if they are in middle school or high school, and they are able to win cash prizes. The videos that we have seen from the kids over the years have been really, really rewarding to get to watch. They get very creative. They get really, really really into it. So we're really looking forward to the video contest wrapping up this year so that we can see all the entries.
Oh, I absolutely love that. I hope that we're able to check those out. I love seeing the creativity, and man, kids are just so creative. It's so amazing. So glad the work that you're both doing. And you mentioned, we said that we'll be able to find what your programs are doing. How can people kind of reach your programs, whether it's if they need help, if they're curious about something, if you want to plug your social media, anything like that? We can start with you, Alexandra.
So anybody needing help can call us at our hotline at 1-800-791-4000. That is answered 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Our website is peacefromdv.org, where you will not only find information about our services, but also about all of the programs that we offer. Anybody who is interested in following us on social media, our handle is peacefromdv. And if you wanted to get in touch about school programs or the video contest, you would reach out to us via email at edutrain@peacefromdv.org or at 724-223-5477.
Perfect. And how about for you, Amelia?
So similarly, we do have that 24-hour hotline here for Chester County. That would be 1-888-711-6270. And you can also call that hotline and ask for me, Amelia, if you are interested in bringing some education programming, not just for the teens that you serve or support, but also for yourselves as adults. If you want to learn more about teen dating violence, we have a program, Teen DV for adults, but we also can teach you more about just general DV and the work that we're doing here at the center. You can also learn more about that by following us on social media. We are on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, TikTok, and YouTube. And you can find us on any of those channels by searching DVCCC PA as well. And I would be remiss if I did not shout out our upcoming high school student art contest. The registration is currently open. And so we encourage all student artists to still submit their registration through March 20th at dvccc.org/student-art-contest.
Perfect. And as we get ready to wrap up, we've covered a lot of great things talking about the basics, some different curriculums, meeting kids where they're at. But I'm going to put you both on the spot here. Amelia, if you want somebody watching this to have one takeaway from this session, what would that takeaway be?
That teen dating violence is domestic violence, and it is something that organizations like DVCCC and DVSSP take just as seriously as when it's occurring among adult relationships.
And same question for you, Alexandra.
Everybody deserves to feel safe and respected in their relationships, and nobody can do everything, but everybody can do something to promote healthy relationships in our communities.
I love that. And I love this session as well. I want to thank you both for joining me. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. We are so happy to be back with Ask an Advocate. I want to thank Alexandra as well as Amelia for joining me, Michael Waterloo, and we'll see you next time.